Hi, this is Tate. I'm going to be talking about Pinewood Derby cars again. I know everybody loves Pinewood Derby cars, but we're going to talk about, we've talked about how to set up your wheels, how to set up your axles. Now we're going to talk about cutting out the car and getting it ready to go. Now, two tips I recommend that I probably didn't talk about in the very last little bit is alcohol and a jewelry cleaning cloth. This is going to allow you to actually buff the axles out and the wheels out, completely getting all that grime off there of either plastic or the plastic polish. So that's kind of my tip that I didn't really talk about in the other videos that you really need to do. You can buy these at Walmart. It's like $5 for a whole sheet of them. I cut them up into little pieces and use them, and they come in purple, which is fancy. So one of the things I really recommend. Okay, so let's get into how to get your car ready to go for the race here. So this is really important. We're going to come down here and we are going to set up your car for being able to reproduce it many times. So this is the block I use every single year, and it already has all my lines on it. I just have to line it up against a block, and I take a square and I line them up real quick. Unfortunately, that was my son Tyler gave me that one. He's like, why are, because I was doing all these fancy gauges and all this kind of stuff to make it all work, and he's like, why don't you just set up against the other car and do it real quick? And I was like, oh, because that's really easy. So definitely do that. So I have it all laid out on the block here. I get it all ready to go. I lay it out. I lay out my car. I mark X's on the spots I want to cut out. I do little circles. You don't have to do these for the car, the part I want to router out. So this is our fastest car. So these cars are definitely our fastest car. They're called our ladder cars, or my interpretation of a ladder car. They allow us to be able to lighten up the car as much as humanly possible, and then we get them ready to go. So this is our fastest car to date, are these three right here. Now these guys actually, this was the 12 to 18-year-old race that these competed in. They went 1, 2, and 3. You can see we kind of dominated the race there. And then another car that came in that actually did really good, basically this design here, and it got fourth. All of the same designs we're going to talk about today. Now, picking your design of your car, you can do any design you want. The fastest designs are definitely flat. So about that 3/8 to 5/16 of a car. Now, if you only have a drill press, let's say you don't have any other tools, maybe you got a drill, a hand drill to do it all, which is fine. You can do this whole thing with a hand drill. It's not the end of the world. So what you want to start out with is we set the block on the side just like this. We line up our drill holes, and we can drill all the way through the 3/8 bit. Now this is if you're going to use tungsten round weights. So they'll come in a little box of about 4 ounces or 3 ounces of round weights that we'll talk a little bit more when we get into weighing your car. So that is so they'll drop in there. Now at the bottom I do the same thing. When I just have a drill, and this is what I kind of started out with before I had routers and all this other stuff that I was trying to do it with. I had all this stuff in the garage, but I didn't use it. So I came through and I just drilled them out really, really good. This is one the kids did. If you line them up and actually make little spots for them all, it's a little better. So if you guys are seeing a little earthquake there, that's because the dogs have decided to hop underneath the tripod. So we drill them all out, make it as light as we can. We can even drill out the front here. And this becomes a very fast car. Okay, these guys have won lots of races with this design. Okay. Now, getting into our fastest car. So if I'm telling you how you want to win the race, if you've got a lot of competition in your race, how do we win? Okay? The first thing we do is we router out the block when it is still in this form. Okay, so I like it nice and square. It gives me a really good way. I actually I just take 2 other blocks, I put it right up against it, and I router the blocks right in with it, and that gives me a real nice flat surface to router against. So once I clamp it in my vise. So what I'll do is I'll router out the back area here and the very back area. This allows me to be able to get 2 ounces of weight behind the back axles, and I put all the rest of the weight in front of it. Okay, so once we've got that idea there, that kind of gives you guys can kind of see how that works. Once I've got the back all routed out, so it's all, these 2 sections are routed up. Remember, I use the little circles to remember. And then I go ahead and I take and I split the block down the center. Oh, sorry, before I do that, let's talk a little bit about drilling holes. This is probably one of the most important parts of this particular procedure, is drilling your canted axles in the front and straight axles in the front and canted axles in the rear. So you can buy these little blocks online that kind of have drill guides. This particular one's going to cost you about $100 to about $175. It has a 3-degree slot and a 0-degree holes. This guy right here is from Pine Pro or Pinewood Pro. These guys are about $21 and they do a great job for the price. So what you're going to end up doing is you're going to have your 2 outside holes are going to be 2.5 degrees. Like I said, 3 degrees is optimal. 2.5 works really well. The car that got 4th this year was really good. They had a car that was just incompetitive with one of the fastest cars out there. And it did really well, and it used this same guide. So the outside 2 holes are 2.5, the inside holes are zeros, and you put the zeros on the front, and the 2.5 or 3 degree holes are canted. So the wheels will actually look like this. Now this is going to be really kind of staggered. So your back holes, and the ones closest to the back, are going to be canted axles like this, and your fronts will be zeroed. So they'll be square to the block. So again, 2.5 to 3 degrees on the back, somewhere around 0 in the front. And that's really important. These guides really help that. Now when we lay out our cars, we want to do 5/8 of an inch from the rear. And we want to do about 5 inches from that back axle. So this is the back axle right here. I'm going to measure 5 inches to the front here and make another mark for my axles. Now if you're really getting really precise, the cars we build go 4 3/4 of an inch from there. So it's basically from the back axle, we go in 5/8 of an inch, and then we measure from the back axle 4 3/4 to our next line. And that's where we set our 0 degrees in the front and our 2.5 to 3 inches in the back, or 3 degrees, sorry, in the back. Now what that gives us is a car that has canted axles in the rear, straight axles in the front, and really that is a big advantage this year that I was able to have over doing bent axles. So if we were able to have them, the years we've done in the past where we actually bent the axles, so we drilled straight holes and then we bent the axles down, those cars work too. Not impossible to make that work, but it is a little harder to tune them when we get to the tuning part of this. So then we take them out, we cut them down the center, we basically get a block like this. And you're going to make a little thicker block when you've got your holes. So you drill your holes for 3/8 of an inch, and I try to put them, you'll see, I don't know if you guys can see this, but the center hole is almost right over top of the back axle hole. As far back as the weight we can get, the better. So we end up with a nice flat block. Like I said, anywhere from about 3/8 to 5/16 is where we're trying to get to. And then I cut out the front on the scroll saw. Now you can use all kinds of different tools for this, but a scroll saw works really good, makes it go quick, and the kids can actually perform that procedure on your scroll saw and cut those all out. I like doing it after it's been thinned out. Makes it a little easier on the saw versus trying to cut them out through this. So I drill all 4 holes so they're not making really tight turns. And then I go ahead and drill them or cut them out, and then I end up with this. Now the last thing I'm going to do is I come in here with the block. And you see it a little better on this one. Try to set it up here. What I do is I take it up to my circle sander and I just take out 1/16 of an inch off the dominant front wheel. So the one axle we're going to bend. So that axle bends down. So that I always make it my right hand's dominant, so that's the hand I use. So I cut out a 1/16 of an inch there, you can actually just take it and kind of chisel it out or whatever you want to do to make that same little hole there. You can see it a little bigger on this one. Alright, so then the last thing we do is we go ahead and we put a piece of vinyl on top. People use plywood, little thin pieces of plywood. I like vinyl because it's super easy for the kids to put on there, and then they get to rub it out. And they've got a car that is super, super fast at this point. I mean, this car is going to be a winner. You know, I can almost guarantee, unless everybody else is watching the video that you're doing this with, this is going to be a car that's going to place in the top 3 no matter what. Just with those basics, setting up your car properly. So make sure you got a piece of nice vinyl on there, cover it up, and you're set to go. So we'll be moving on to our next video here, so please keep watching. That is going to be talking about how to weight your car. And as always, have a great day.